Good morning. Students, teachers, officials, and community leaders, my name is Rebecca Tinder, and I am the president of the West Virginia Civics Coalition. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Civics for Everyone. Can you believe it? We are finally here. It's our state's premier event during the second National Civics Learning Week. Our West Virginia Civics Coalition consists of leaders of statewide groups, organizations, and governmental entities, and we have an enduring commitment to improve, strengthen, and our education for West Virginians, women, men, and children. In this, our first 2 years of existence, we have officially incorporated as a charitable nonprofit organization. So if you check out our website, you might make a donation. Here in West Virginia, and received our determination as a tax-exempt entity by the Internal Revenue Service. We elected a 15-member board of directors with a diverse representation from all parts of the state and numerous types of groups committed to improving civic education for our citizens. We've held monthly Zoom meetings to share information, and you're all welcome to log on to those meetings to take necessary actions. And we've conducted extensive surveys of education leaders, unveiled our comprehensive website, WVCivicsCoalition.org, which is the hub for Civics Coalition programming, hosting an extremely successful National Civics Learning Week event last year, and we planned this year's unique seminar, instituted important graduation cord pilot program, which you'll hear about later, and received necessary funding from the National iCivics Group, which helped make this happen today. It's wonderful that we have in-person attendees from a dozen counties outside Charleston with us, as far away as Morgantown, Grafton, and Dingus. More importantly, this event is being live streamed to anyone with an internet connection here in West Virginia, across the country, across the world, if they're up. We wish to express our utmost appreciation to the justices of our West Virginia Supreme Court and their professional staff for welcoming us and enabling us to utilize this wonderful facility and the technology system. So please join me in a big round of applause for this. All right, so we'll get started with our extraordinary presentations. Media literacy is a topic of the highest interest and a priority to every man, woman, and child. Does anybody pay any attention to media? Yes, okay, all right. So, most especially our young people. We're exceptionally pleased to have two well-known and highly respected leaders in West Virginia's media with us today. They're going to talk about matters of interest to each one of us and respond to your questions and concerns. Amelia Knisely is with the West Virginia Watch News Service, and Taylor Eaton is with WSAZ television station. Please remember that they are both taking questions after their remarks. For those of you watching virtually, please text your questions to 304-437-5442, and they will be asked. So please welcome Amelia and Taylor.
Good morning. How are you guys? Hello. Good morning. I am Amelia Knisely. I'm a reporter with West Virginia Watch. We are an online nonprofit no paywall news service, and newspapers all around the state use our content. So just today I've had stories in the Beckley newspaper, the Fairmont paper, etc. I am covering the Capitol right now because we were in session, and for the rest of the year I focus a lot of my coverage on children's issues and education, which is relevant to everyone in this room. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi there, everyone, and to everybody that is watching with us from home or virtually. I have to admit, I'm a little bit nervous because normally my job requires me to be in front of a television and I don't see you all face to face. So this is a little bit different for me, but I'm so glad to be with you today. Just a little bit about me, some background information. I can't say that I was born in West Virginia, but I can say that I was raised here. And I'm so, so proud to be able to say that because West Virginia and my education here really helped to shape me into the journalist that I am today. And it's because of my education as to why I wanted to choose this as a career path. So I grew up right down the road here from Charleston. I went to Winfield for my public education and then went on to West Virginia University upon graduating from high school. And then I decided to come back home. And my career path at WSAZ hasn't always been one of straight and narrow. It's kind of been a really curvy, windy journey to get to the anchor desk, which is where I am now. And I just recently accepted a new challenge, and it was always a dream of mine to say that I was a main anchor at WSAZ, and I can now say that because I join you and your families each and every evening at 5, 5:30, 6, 10, and 11. So it is a privilege and it is an honor to be a part of your families each and every night, and I hope that our presentation today might even inspire some of you to become future journalists because our future is in your hands. So with that, we'll get our presentation started. I'll turn it back over here to Amelia and we'll tell you a little bit about our jobs and then we'll take questions here at the end.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Grab my notes. My notes are the coffee-stained ones. Okay, so I think we're going to talk a little about why you should care about news. I know that politics or news can feel maybe a little bit far from your life as a teenager, but even right now as our legislators are meeting for we have about 30 days left, they are considering bills that will affect your everyday life. For example, there is a big bill this year banning cell phones in schools. Do you maybe care about that? If you can take your cell phone to school or not? That's something that they're being considered. If you don't care about politics, but you want to be a teacher, there are bills that are about your profession, your future profession. If you want to be a doctor, there are bills about regulating that. So this can feel far away, but covering the Capitol and news can affect your everyday life. And it's something that we both, as we've gotten to know each other preparing for this, we're both really passionate about our jobs. Like Taylor, I grew up in West Virginia, and I really take my job very seriously, bringing trustworthy, hopeful, and accurate news to West Virginians every day.
And from the TV side of that, I would say that news consumption is a habit. We make it a habit, and it should be for all of us. It's not necessarily, I can tell you all, we live busy day-to-day lives, and we're constantly on the go. But years ago, it was commonplace for our families to sit down together and read the Sunday newspaper, or we'd get home from school and the entire family would gather around and watch the 6 o'clock news. And that's not always the case nowadays. And we'll talk about some of the challenges that we're now facing because social media has become such a big part of what we do. And I saw a lot of you shake your heads when Amelia said, the whole banning cell phone usage in schools. And you're like, yeah, it's attached at my hip, right? You're constantly on your cell phones. So those are things that shape you every single day. And I can just speak from experience. I actually started doing my school announcements when I was in elementary school and then continued to do that in middle and high school. And I always felt that there was a power in being in the know, right? It's a good thing to be curious and to know what's happening in the world around you because the things that are happening around you ultimately affect you all. So let's say, for instance, I would always report on in elementary school, I would say, oh, well, tomorrow's school lunch is going to be pizza. Well, if you don't like pizza, you might decide to bring your lunch, right? That's a decision, a conscious decision you make because you were in the know and because you were informed. Let's say there's a bad crash on I-64 and mom's late to get you from a practice, or maybe you drive yourself and you're like, hey, I got to call my parents and let them know I'm going to be late. Those are things that you need to know because it affects your everyday life. So I would just tell you all, be curious, constantly be asking questions. And even if you don't want to do this as a profession, it's good to know what's happening in the world around you, to be able to make sense of the news, for you all to be able to digest that. And Amelia and I are going to dive into that a little bit more, because it's imperative on us to be able to present you with that information. But especially in today's world, with all the noise of social media and some of the things that are out there, it's important for you all to do your own research too. So that's why it's really important for you to care about what's happening every single day in your lives. And whether you sit down and you watch the news or not, or you're sitting down and you're reading the paper or reading Amelia's articles online, it's still good for you to be checking in on those news sources every day to make sure that you know what's happening not only in your local communities, but around the entire world.
We're going to end this presentation by giving you some tips for media literacy, but before we get there, we kind of wanted to give you a peek into how we put together stories so that you will trust us and hopefully engage with news sources. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what it looks like to put together a news story. I know we have some elementary students listening, and so I'm going to use the example of if I was covering a bill to make 4 hours of recess in school. Okay, so if I wake up and I see that this legislature is like, we have a bill for 4 hours outside time, I'm gonna say, okay, so I'm gonna find someone who's for that, maybe the person that sponsored that bill, and go talk to them and say, why did you sponsor this? Why do you think it's a good idea? Then I'm going to find someone who is against that. Maybe it's someone in a different political party or the same political party, and go and find them and say, what do you not like about this bill? What are your concerns? Is it that they might get too hot in the sun? Is it they would need sunscreen and that costs money, right? There could be all these different reasons why someone might be against making recess longer. And something that's really important to me, what I think is a really critical part of that story, is talking to students or mothers and fathers and saying, what is your reaction to this? Because people in this building are going to make laws, but it's ultimately going to affect you. And so then I would put all of that in a story that is balanced, hopefully, and accurate. And I would always want to back up anything I'm saying with data. And so that's what it kind of looks like every day, whether I'm covering a bill or whether I'm covering the foster care crisis in West Virginia. It's waking up and saying, what's one side of this issue, what's the other, and how do I bring this into a story and talk to the people who it's most going to affect?
And to just kind of piggyback off of what Amelia was saying, it's a little bit different for us in TV just because we are a visual medium as opposed to print. So a big portion of what we do now is called process reporting. So people that watch with us in today's time, they want to know, how did we arrive at our conclusion? And Amelia has a little more freedom with print. She can include a whole lot more, but I mean, for those of you that have watched the news, you know our time is limited. Our 6 p.m. newscast is only 30 minutes long, so there's only so much you can squeeze into that narrow window. So we try to include all of the important points. And so it's very imperative for us as journalists because, you know, we hope that you will trust us and look to us because you know that we will give you factual information. And so when we're thinking about those things and we sit down, we have an entire newsroom that helps to form these stories. You know, it's maybe my face that you see on TV every night, but we have reporters that are out there in the field that are gathering all of that information and putting together those stories for our nightly newscast. And then for me, it's my role to be able to digest that and have a full understanding of the stories that we're presenting. And I say presenting, but we're not just presenting you with the news. We hope that as we read that to you and we give you that news each and every evening, that you will be able to understand it as well. So it's important for us, if we don't understand something, there's power in saying, I don't know, and going to someone that does know. Because when you read through law, there's a lot of legal jargon that might be used. Some of that stuff is pretty hard to understand. So it's okay to be able to go up to someone and say, I don't know, can you help me? So process reporting is really big. So when we gather our facts, the first thing that we do is we'll have meetings each and every day within our newsroom. We come up with ideas. We sit down at a table together and we say, what are the big stories that are affecting West Virginians today? And for us, that coverage even expands into Ohio and Kentucky. So we have to look at what our neighbors are dealing with too, because our coverage area is very vast. We expand beyond West Virginia in our coverage. So then after that, we reach out to our contacts and our sources. We start to gather our information. And that's a very important part of what people want to know. Where did you get that information? Tell me. Don't hide that from me. Tell me where you got that. Third, we then develop our story. We write our scripts. Then we fact check and we verify our information, because maintaining credibility is a huge part of what we do. We always try to present both sides of every single story, and I think that's a beautiful thing about local news. When you read with us, it's very balanced, in my opinion, and we try to do that because it's very important to show all sides of every issue. Then we edit and we review. We have a full team of editors that work with us, our photographers. For instance, we had one just a minute ago, and I think John's already slipped out of here, but John has been with us for years. And so we have a team of talented journalists that are here with us on our team. And so we sit down, we edit, we review. We go over legal and ethical issues, and Amelia talked about this too. We have a code of ethics that we have to follow because we're held to a higher standard as well. And there are legal things that we have to work through. So we have a team of legal experts that help us through stories, especially if we are getting into deeper investigations. They help us to determine what legal ramifications may come from what we do. And then lastly is the production and the on-air part of it. And so that's when you see me sitting down at the anchor desk with Tim every single evening, that's when we are presenting you with all the facts that we have gathered for the day. So my job has kind of changed over the years because I used to be a reporter. So I used to be doing that every single day, and then now I'm kind of anchored to the desk, and so my main focus is just making sure I'm understanding what I'm presenting to you, and then you in turn are able to understand that and then use that in your day-to-day lives to make your decisions.
And I'm going to follow up a little bit about what you said about ethics, which you did a great job explaining. How many of you have ever seen something on Facebook, posted, or TikTok that you knew was absolutely not true? All the time, right? And so as journalists, we don't want to be that, right? And so we have ethics that guide our reporting. If I report something that is a lie, I could lose my job. We could get sued, right? And so we have checks and balances for our reporting. And it's never my intention to make a mistake, but yesterday I made a mistake spelling someone's name wrong in a story, and someone texted me and said, "Can you change that?" I was like, absolutely, right? And I've never had any serious story corrections, but every now and then things, maybe I missed something that happened, that was major context for that story. Someone will call me and I am willing to make that correction, and you will see at the bottom of our story, this story has been updated to reflect this correction. And that part of our job is really important right now in the social media age. We cannot just go and say, I heard at the Capitol so-and-so said this, and just put it out there. That's not our goal at all, but you do see that kind of stuff on social media right now, right? And so I think it's so important as TikTok and Facebook and everything is so rapid that we want to be first. If you're a journalist, you're competitive, right? We're competitive people, but it's important for us to step back, take a moment, and make sure our stories are completely sourced and verified before we move forward. And I know for us at West Virginia Watch, we pretty much in no situation use anonymous sources. Maybe in like a very extreme case, but for us, it's really important that we're verifying everything that we're able to report. And I think we're going to talk next about how news is changing, which plays right into TikTok and Facebook.
And I'll just go off of what Amelia said there really quick, because this, I think, applies to the media industry as a whole. I've always kind of lived by the motto, yes, I want to be first, but I'd rather be accurate. So I don't want to push out information just on a whim thinking it's all right because I wanted to be first. I'd rather be last and know that I gave you every ounce of correct information that I could, and be okay with being beat. And as Amelia said, it's okay, we're all human. We all mess up. That's just in our nature, it's in our DNA. But it's very important when you mess up to admit it and just say, yeah, I messed up. People will appreciate when you're transparent with them, rather than trying to cover it up and pretend it didn't happen. Yeah, I messed up, it is what it is, and then we all move on from it. So that's also a very important part of what we do. And it's a big portion of why we hope you'll trust us. I've been doing this for 10 years now. I'm going on 11 years. And I guess, let me tell you, for all of you that are with us that are students, you'll blink, like I feel like I just graduated college. And now I've been doing this job for 10 years. And so I feel like as time passes, it just keeps on going quicker and quicker. So in 10 years, it's been incredible to see the change and the growth within our industry. Like I said, you all probably, how many of you all have your cell phones on you right now? How many of you all were already on TikTok or social media this morning before you got here? Yep, I figured. So that's my point. Our cell phones are so much a part of our daily lives. The internet, We're constantly there. And that really became true for us during the pandemic, especially for you all. A lot of you were probably doing online learning at home. Our jobs really didn't slow down at all. I think during that time, a lot of people, unfortunately, were out of work. Many of you all were home from school, not us. We were still working hard day to day to day because everything was changing constantly. And that is very much the case. There are so many aspects of the newsroom that are different from when I first started. So we have a program that we've started at our station. We call it the WSAZ Now Desk. And that is an entire desk within our newsroom. And we're currently in the process of changing things around and getting a new setup. So hopefully you all will be seeing that soon. But that allows us, so basically, when we put a newscast on the air, you have your anchor, your reporters that are in the show. We have producers that are working on putting that show together. There's a director behind the scenes that's helping press all the buttons to make sure that everything gets presented on the air correctly. But on that desk, I'm everything. So I have an audio board, I'm controlling sound, I'm in touch with reporters, I'm getting their live shots in the system. So this system has allowed for us to reach you the second that something happens, because nobody wants to wait for the 6 o'clock news anymore to find out what's happening around them. If a crash just happened on the interstate, you want to know about it right there in that moment. So we can send you alerts directly to your phone to alert you that something is happening. Then we can hop on that desk, and within a couple of minutes, we can be broadcasting to you live outside of our regular newscast format. And we really had to adapt and kind of buy into the whole TikTok and Instagram and YouTube concepts. Those were not things when we first started in the business. So now we constantly have all sorts of social media that we're a part of. And Amelia and I have talked about this. I think there's a lot of ethics that go into how you use those platforms, because you probably see a lot of fun videos on there, but you have to find a balance. And so we know it's important to meet you where you are, and a lot of you consume your news today on TikTok. So we want to meet you there, but we want to do that in a way that you still respect us and you understand that we have a job to do. So we use that platform a lot to be able to bring you headlines of the day. We do a lot of our news and weather alerts there, our weather team. They have been great. We recently had severe flooding that affected a lot of our schools, and I think maybe even some that are joining with us today that might have just recently been back in the classroom. And so that was a big portion of how we were able to bring you that information. So challenges, yes, but do we embrace them? Absolutely. And I can't even imagine what the industry will look like when you all are graduating 5, 10, 15 years from now. It's totally changed from the time that we started. So we are trying to embrace that, but also understanding that with these changes, artificial intelligence has really been a big battle for us. And there's still a lot of things that we're unsure of when it comes to that. So there's nothing that can replace a human. And so I guess we're thankful for that, because we know that we're always going to be needed, because I feel like artificial intelligence can lack a lot of context. And growing up here, we know our local communities. We've lived here. We've been here. Artificial intelligence can't replicate that. So there's something to be said for the fact that you all are here, you're listening to this, and I hope that you will take this and run with it and maybe decide to stay in West Virginia, because we will always need journalists. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit more, but I'll turn it over to Amelia to talk about how things have really changed from the print side. So just know that technology is always changing, and I hope you embrace it, but just understand we are also learning as we go too, and there are a lot of things that we're working through. It's a work in progress, but we try to embrace it and do the best that we can with it, and still hold true to our ethics, and hope that you will trust us as we navigate this new part of the journalism world.
Yes, it has changed so much since I started reporting. When I started reporting more than 10 years ago, it was like turn in my story and then it appears in the newspaper the next day. Or I was a television reporter for a while, so it was a process like that, but for TV. But now everything is online, right? Most families, most of your parents, I imagine, consume their news online, not in a print newspaper. Now in West Virginia, we do have a significant elderly population that still loves a print paper, thank goodness. But our industry is changing, and I've had to adapt to social media. I recently made a TikTok. I'm too old to be on TikTok, guys. But I felt like I had to meet people where they were. And I was sitting with my mom friends who were saying, I saw this on TikTok. I saw this on TikTok. They weren't ever saying, I read this in the newspaper. And so I felt like that was something I needed to embrace by getting on that platform. But I still have to use the same ethics that I use in making my print articles. And so I really do try in 2 minutes, which you guys do every day in TV, I try in 2 minutes to say, here's this side of the bill, here's this side of the story, and put all that out there for someone to hopefully look at. So I wanted to give you guys a couple tips for consuming news. And first of all, we hope you will. We hope that you find things that you're interested in and curious about. If there's something that you maybe see on Facebook or on TikTok, are people in high school on Facebook? I don't know anymore, but if you see something online or you hear something from a friend, first advice would be to talk to your parents before you start researching something, right? They might have information to help guide you, especially for our younger viewers who are listening at home or in their classrooms right now. But it's something you can do with your parents, right? Take in news together, see what your parents' opinions or guardians' opinions are on it. Second of all, look at the source and question why you should trust it. So as we've hopefully explained to you, well, our TV stations and our newspapers, our online outlets are guided by a code of ethics for journalists. So we do hope that you will trust us, and we do try to own up to those mistakes that may happen over time. But every article you read, is there research to back up what they're saying? Is there data? Are there links? Are there quotes from experts? It's not just someone giving you their opinion. Look for that data, see if it's reliable. Do they have people on both sides of the issue? And this is one that's really important. Is it possible that you're reading an ad? Because that happens, right? So I was trying to think of a good example, and I was thinking it's allergy season. So if you click on a link that's like 5 ways to help your allergies, and it's only listing one medication over and over again, that's probably what we call sponsored content, AKA an ad and not a news story. So try to look for those little things to help clue you in that it might be an ad and not an actual news story. If you see something on social media, double check it's true before you share it, and look for AI-generated images or content that Taylor touched on. We are seeing that more and more. I have even seen a West Virginia news outlet recently running AI stories with no byline, which is like who wrote the story. And there can be some clues, missing words, periods in weird places, but just trying to double check what you're reading came from an actual journalist and not AI. And finally, don't rely on one news source. See how WSAZ and West Virginia Watch are covering the same story. And so often reporters cover things a little bit different, and you might get a better picture if you take in multiple news sources. And finally, protect your mental health. We are not made to consume news 24/7. We really want you to read news so we can have jobs, and we love our jobs. But we are not meant to take in around the world, DC news, West Virginia news all the time. So find the things you're passionate about, stay informed, but also be aware that it's okay to take a break from the news too. And anything else you want to add, Taylor?
I guess just a quick parting word before then we turn it over to questions, and we hope you have a bunch. As a young girl in West Virginia who was always curious about the world around her, I just hope that you are too. There aren't as many people who want to do our jobs now, and I think we can both say that safely. It was always a very competitive business, and there's a lot of skepticism that surrounds our careers. And I can't speak for Amelia, but for myself, I use that as a driving force for me. Because every single day during the week that I step behind that anchor desk, and if you all are tuned in at that moment, or you're watching later, or you're watching online somewhere, I know it is so important for me to be empathetic, to understand my audience that is tuned in, but most importantly, I feel that you deserve the facts. And that can help with your credibility. When you're in the know, and you can have a conversation with someone, and you back it up with facts, there is something about that is just so powerful. So I hope that the young journalist that grew up in West Virginia, that is now a staple part of WSAZ, which is an incredible honor for me. Growing up watching that TV station, it's a surreal moment to be a part of that now. But I just hope that you all will carry the torch. and that West Virginia journalism will live on for years and years and years, and will always have powerful journalists that you know are providing you with the truth. It's very easy to get caught up in the world of social media and read things and take them as fact, but that is where it is important for you to find trusted news sources, trusted journalists, do your own research. And whether you decide to do this as a career or not, I hope that you will always continue to stay curious about the world around you, and that you will want to be involved in your communities, because you are the change makers of the future. And so Amelia and I hope that we're doing this for a really long time. I hope we're doing this for 10, 20, 30 more years, but we would love to see a bunch of you join our teams in the future to help us to continue to provide the highest quality of journalism that we can in West Virginia.
Absolutely. You said everything I would say. Also, our jobs are really fun. I have to admit, I really do have fun every day, and I'm a nerd, so I like covering the Capitol, but also it's really fun to meet West Virginians. Even when you're so often in our jobs, we're meeting people at the hardest point in their life. A flood has destroyed their home. They're involved in a really difficult court case, and they still take time out of their day to speak with us. And I do not take that privilege for granted at all. It is an honor, and that West Virginians are really the reason I'm still in this very difficult career at times, because our readers and the people of our state are wonderful, and they deserve really high quality news and for their stories to be told by local reporters who want to care about them and tell their stories accurately. So thank you all so much, and we hope you have questions. We would love to answer them.
Questions from the live audience?
So you mentioned AI. So what does that look like in your job? Are you just using it for the efficiency purpose? Obviously not writing a whole article, reading for efficiency purposes.
That is a great question. So I have been really AI resistant. It's gotten a pretty bad rep in journalism, right? Like there was a reporter in Oklahoma who lost their job because they were using AI to write their stories. That's not a good idea. But I recently started using AI to compare bills. So a House bill and a Senate bill can be about the same subject, and I've been using AI to point out the differences, but that's the extent I will go. So that is an efficiency use, but I'm not going to be using it to write stories or rely on the summary. Like I want to summarize things myself, but I've been trying to find ways to use it to be more efficient. So yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
So from the TV side of things, I can tell you we actually have a company AI policy, and we have a whole team that's been dedicated to just trying to understand the whole concept of artificial intelligence. And we prefer within our company that our content is created by us, by humans. We understand it's a very powerful tool, but it can also misrepresent a lot of information, and it can lack context. And for us, it can create a lot of security risk, just from a legal and an ethical standpoint for us. So I can tell you we have a whole team within our parent company that is dedicated to trying to understand this and embrace that challenge. There are certain circumstances where we may use it, if it's transcribing an interview or something of that nature, but to be honest, we try to avoid it as much as we can, to know that we are the ones that are providing you with the content. So, that way that your news source is trusted and that we're not pulling from other avenues. So it's still changing, and we're still trying to embrace it because it's a fairly new concept, and it's one that I think we still don't fully understand. But from our context, we prefer to have our content created by our own team members within our company.
That was a great question.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
As a youth, what's the best way to get involved with journalism?
You want to take that one first?
Sure. Well, there are opportunities for youth to write for, I don't know if the Charleston Gazette Mail still has it, but at some point they had a flip side where youth could write, and there are newspapers around the state that have a similar program. So checking in with your local newspaper would be one way to start. Also get an internship, and you don't have to wait until college in some cases for that to happen. Their internships are a great opportunity because you get thrown on a variety of stories, and you'll kind of figure out what you like. Do you like covering the breaking news, the fires, the car crashes, things like that? Or do you like covering the Capitol? Do you like covering human interest pieces? So I would just say reach out to your local television station, newspaper, et cetera, and say, are there any opportunities where I could help you out? And most outlets are going to be very excited to hear from you.
From the TV standpoint of things, I will 100% agree with Amelia. An internship within journalism is the best learning experience that you can get. I did my internship actually with WSAZ while I was in college, and that was a true understanding of how a newsroom operated. I'm so grateful that I had my college experience. It taught me so many things, but in college, there's a little more leniency. The day-to-day of the newsroom is very different in that you don't have days on end to turn a story. It may be morning of, you find out you have to cover something, and you're out there covering it all day long, and then you have to come back and you have to turn stories for our evening shows within the newsroom. So you don't have days on end, you only have a few hours to be able to craft that story. So doing an internship and getting that real world experience is by far unmatched. So I would, yes, on top of what Amelia said, we would all be so glad to have you. Our internship program has really grown over the years, so we have a lot more opportunities for you to come in the newsroom and to shadow a variety of workers within our newsroom, not just myself, not just our reporters, but maybe those behind the scenes. Maybe, you like to write. We have web editors that help with our web team, take care of our social media. So you can shadow a variety of our workers within our newsroom, which I think is great because not everybody wants to be on TV and have your face in front of the television. I understand, and that's okay. It takes all of us to be able to do what we do every single day. So internship, absolutely. And we also, within our company, our parent company, we have a lot of internship opportunities, even within Washington. If you're maybe interested in the more political realm and you'd like to be right in the middle of where everything's happening, we've expanded upon those opportunities. So I would just say, yeah, reach out to your local journalist. We are always happy to help you and guide you and, share in our experience of how we got started in the business. But yeah, just reach out to your local journalist and we'll steer you in the right path. Lots of opportunities here, though, in West Virginia for you to learn. Do we have any virtually? No? Okay, thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you both, Amelia and Taylor. We really appreciate those comments about media literacy. And without media, you all wouldn't have known to be here. And we even had the extra boost of our new Secretary of State, Chris Warner, who publicized this event to all of the people that follow him. And we want to thank Chris Warner and his staff for all they did to help this event this year and last year. We have a great actor among us that you might meet later who participated last year in our event with the voting rights and voting machines last year. So a great thank you to the Secretary of State's office. All right. So we have our students coming in from Dingus Elementary who are going to fill up the back of the courtroom. And we are ready for our Supreme Court justices to join us. While they're coming in, I want to let you know that we are so honored to have the entire West Virginia Supreme Court with us today, all 5 members. The Honorable Chief Justice William R. Bill Wooten is a native of Raleigh County, having been educated in Raleigh County Public Schools as well as Marshall University and the WVU College of Law. Chief Justice Wooten has a long history of public service, including serving as a law clerk, assistant attorney general, assistant prosecuting attorney, legislator, U.S. Army Reserve, and West Virginia Army National Guard, where he retired as a colonel, in addition to the practice of law. The justices should be arriving any minute. And Chief Justice Wooten will introduce the remaining members of the Supreme Court and tell us about the court's strong commitment to civic education for our citizens, and then the entire court will engage in a question and answer session with all of you, just like we did. So don't forget, for those of you who are watching virtually, please text your questions to 304-437-5442, and they will be asked. Again, that number is 304-437-5442. Justices?
All rise and be silent. They are the justices of the Supreme Court of Appeals, Chief Justice Mingo preside. Please be seated.
Good morning and welcome to the Supreme Court of Appeals. I'm Bill Wooten. I'm the current Chief Justice, and I'm joined here today by three of my fellow justices, Justice Tim Armstead, Justice Haley Bunn, and Justice Charles Trump. Our senior justice, or longest-serving justice, is Beth Walker, and she's unable to be here today because of another obligation, but she sends her greetings and her best wishes. The Supreme Court is pleased to host this event jointly with the West Virginia Civics Coalition. We're webcasting this event so that students and teachers throughout the state can watch live, and also on the Supreme Court's YouTube channel, if you want to, which is archived, you can watch it in the future. This court places the highest priority on equal rights for all West Virginia citizens. This is reflected in the quotation from Thomas Jefferson that's displayed along the top of the walls in this courtroom, a quotation that every person appearing before this court sees. The true foundation of Republican government is the equal right of every citizen in his person and property and in their management. That's the Jefferson quote. We focus on programs such as this event that have the goal of helping West Virginians better understand their rights and responsibilities as citizens. Today's program is part of the National Civics Learning Week, which is a national celebration and part of iCivics. iCivics was founded by the late United States Supreme Court was founded by the late Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor after her retirement from the court. The theme of this event is civic education for everyone, because every person is important in our democracy. As Justice O'Connor once said, one concerned and dedicated person can meaningfully affect what some consider an uncaring world. So give freely of yourself always to your family, your friends, your community, and to your country. Our country was founded on the idea that educated and informed citizens can and should control their own government. It is critically important that citizens understand the way our government works so that everyone can participate in governing. This court has developed several programs to aid in educating and promoting civics in West Virginia. Those of you who are here in person have seen our Learning Center just across the hall from the courtroom. It opened in 2023. We hope you'll find time to visit it while you're here. For more than 25 years, this Supreme Court has also had a program called LAWS, which stands for Legal Advancement for West Virginia Students. Twice each year, during our fall and spring terms of court, We hold actual Supreme Court arguments in a county somewhere around the state, usually in a high school auditorium, but recently we did it in the Marion County Courthouse. We invite area high school students to attend. Before the day of arguments, these students learn about the cases. Then after arguments, they get a talk with the attorneys involved. The justices also normally have lunch with the students, talk with the students about the court and about our job. We have, throughout the duration of this program, served more than 7,500 students in 39 counties so far. The Supreme Court also has 2 video series that are available on the Supreme Court YouTube channel. The first series, called The Foundation of Justice, consists of videos, each of which are about 8 minutes long. One is about the court system in general. The other is about the Supreme Court and this courtroom. By the way, after my remarks, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. And there's a lot of interesting information about this courtroom, so I hope you ask the question about the courtroom. The second video series is called And Justice for All. Each of the videos in this series is less than 5 minutes long and covers topics like the differences and the similarities between the United States Supreme Court and the West Virginia Supreme Court, and the requirements to be a judicial officer in West Virginia. There's one video on why justices wear robes. Justice Walker, who's not here today, also has a podcast. She joins with Supreme Court Justice Rhonda Wood of Arkansas, and this podcast is called Lady Justice, Women of the Court. They discuss the accomplishments and challenges faced by women in state courts. Along with their invited guests, they also cover topics such as the importance of state constitutional law, how courts operate, the meaning of justice, and why state courts matter. Our last program is called Have Gavel, Will Travel. Through this program, active and retired justices, family court judges, and magistrates visit schools to participate in read aloud programs and to talk with classes about the judicial system. There's a list of judicial officers who participate on our West Virginia Judiciary website under Student Resources. All of us appreciate very much your participation today. We hope that not only today's programs, but all the programs offered by this court will provide you with the tools that will assist you to become better informed citizens. And with that, I thank you for your attention and certainly welcome your questions. Who has a question? Back there, go ahead.
Yes, so say, how could you perhaps get interested inside of a state court or anything like that, like perhaps like the state judicial?
Is the question, how did we get interested in serving in this position? Did I understand that right? Yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
All right, I will start off. So I grew up in southern West Virginia, which may become quickly apparent from this accent that I have. I'm from the holler, as they say. And growing up in southern West Virginia, I was instilled with a really strong sense of justice. There were no lawyers in my family. It wasn't a profession that I had much of an example for. But the way that I grew up taught me very much that no one else, because they were from somewhere else or sounded different or were older or younger or whatever it may be, was better than me, and I wasn't better than them either. We are all equal before the law, and we should all be treated justly. And so that kind of started the spark in me that I really wanted to be a lawyer and then eventually be a judge. And I was pleased to be appointed by then Governor Justice, and then elected by the people. And that is one of my most proud accomplishments, that the people of West Virginia trusted me with this position, and I get to serve and do justice. That is one of the biggest privileges of this job.
Thank you, Justice Bundy. Another question? Someone in the back raised their hand. Stand up if you would so we can hear you. Charles. Your question is, what is your most important role as a justice? Charles, you want to?
Sure. Thank you, Chief, and thank you all for being here. It's, for those of you who are students, you understand, I'm sure, that our government has three branches, and the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. And this court heads the judicial branch in West Virginia. And as Chief Justice Wooten had said, and Justice Bunn, our job is to make sure that the words of Jefferson lived out, across the frieze here are real. We try to bring that to life for the people of West Virginia by being fair and impartial in every case so that when any person stands before the court with a case or a controversy pending to be decided, he or she is treated with equality, fairness, and dignity. And that is our fundamental and most important role and job.
Go ahead, stand up in the back, Tim. Could you say that again, please, sir?
If you could give kids advice, what about being fair, what would it be?
Did you hear it?
What advice would you give kids about being fair?
Oh, okay.
About being fair? Yes.
Justice Armstead?
Okay. Well, that's a great question, and thank you for being here with us. We, as both Justice Bunn and Justice Trump have talked about, that's one of our biggest goals here is to be fair, but that extends to everyone, to every student in this room. Sometimes, how many of you have brothers and sisters? Anybody have brothers and sisters? How many of you have good friends? Okay, and sometimes, do you always agree with each other? No, sometimes things come up and you just feel differently than they do, right? And so I think one of the best things best pieces of advice I could give you is to listen to the other side. When it comes to us trying to find out what the fair result is in a case, because we hear all kinds of cases. Sometimes we hear cases where someone is accused of murder or a crime, and they don't feel like sometimes that they got a fair trial, like there was something that happened in their trial. They just don't feel as fair. And they want somewhere to go and tell their story and say, here's why I think this wasn't fair. Same thing with car accidents, with contracts, different things, all different types of cases that we hear as a part of this court. And one of the things that's important for us to do, and I think it's important for each of you to do when you want to try to be fair about things, is to listen to the other side of the story. Because sometimes we just decide, well, I know I'm right, and I don't need to hear anyone else's side of the story. And it's hard to get to the fair and the right result if you haven't listened to the other side. So I think it's very important for us when we hear cases in this courtroom, the lawyers for both sides will stand here and they'll each give their side of the story of how they think whatever case we're hearing occurred. And it's important for us to listen to both sides and then to sit down and really try to determine who is right. And sometimes, sometimes the five of us don't agree as to who is right, and we have to vote. And as long as three of us agree, that's the result. So like, let's say someone is charged with a crime and they think they weren't tried fairly, and they come to us and both sides give their stories. We listen. We sat around a table in a room beside of this room, and we discuss it, and then we vote. And so maybe 3 of us will say, no, I think that person really is guilty. And the other two may say, no, I don't think they are. And so that the majority rules in this court. And we try to always be fair, but again, I think the most important thing in trying to be fair is to have an open mind at the beginning. Don't make your mind up ahead of time. Listen to both sides, and then listen to each other when we discuss these cases and try to be fair. And I think the same thing can apply to each of you, is to listen to your friends, listen to your siblings, listen to their side of the story, and then try to come to a fair result.
Thank you. Next question, is someone, go ahead, ma'am.
If you could add one thing to the Constitution, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Good thing it's my turn. Well, this is something that has been read into the Constitution, but it doesn't explicitly say it. In some places, the Constitution says men. I kind of wish it said men and women, but we've interpreted it to mean men and women anyway. That's a very tough question, but I will say that the Constitution, both the West Virginia Constitution and the United States Constitution, are our highest authority. We have to make sure that they are upheld all the time. So we respect every word, every clause in the Constitution, and that is what we weigh all new laws by. Are they constitutional? And if you're sitting here in this room and you're a little bit nerdy like me, I'm going to tell you to grab a copy of the West Virginia Constitution, which we have right outside the courtroom. If you need more copies, we'll get them to you. And read it. Just read it. A lot of folks have read the United States Constitution, or you know the First Amendment, free speech, and the Fourth Amendment, no unreasonable searches, and the Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent, which doesn't work with your parents. But anyway, you know all those, but you may not know the differences in our West Virginia Constitution. And I urge you as West Virginia citizens to take a look at it, whether you be old or young, and see how it's different. And also think about the special rights that we have as West Virginians and the special role that we played. So one thing that I like to point out, we've talked a lot about the Jefferson quote that you see when you walk in. We also have a quote that we see when we're sitting here on the bench, and that's the Lincoln quote. Firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. And what I like to think about is West Virginia's role when Lincoln made that quote. So that quote was part of his second inaugural address, and that was given toward the end of the Civil War. And think how important West Virginia was in that process, in having the Union prevail. And so Lincoln, I feel like, was talking directly to us as West Virginians to hold tight to what is right. And, you know, the West Virginia Constitution was just being formed around that time. And I just like to think of those circumstances and how that makes our Constitution different. So that was a really long-winded answer, and I did show my nerdiness a little bit, but I hope it got you there.
Thank you, Justice Bundy. Who's got a question? Go ahead, sir. Here's a microphone for you.
How much do you believe that your own personal experiences have affected your rulings?
Charles.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. You may have to get one of my more seasoned colleagues to give you a better answer than I can. I'm the newest member of this court, and so I've been here for just a little over 2 months right now. And we have in draft form some opinions that will be published soon with my name on it, but none that's been published yet. But I will say, in answer to your question, I think all of us come to the court with a lifetime of varied experiences. You know, mine is as a practicing attorney and as a legislator for a long time. Others share similar experiences, but each of us comes to the court which is the way the framers of our Constitution wanted it. They wanted people to stand for election, to run for this office, and the people choose who serves in these seats, the people who want to seek these seats, maybe to be a Supreme Court justice, have to make the case to the citizens of the state why his or her experience qualifies him or her for the job that we have.
Thank you, Justice Trump. Who's got the next question? Go ahead, ma'am.
Do you ever worry about making a wrong decision?
Do we ever worry about making a wrong decision? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yes, I think all of us do. You know, we're all human. Excuse me, we're not going to always be perfect. And what we try to do is, we have a lot of people that work with us, a lot of staff members that work with us that help us research whatever case is in front of us and take, all the information about it and try to come to the right decision. And then we talk with each other. We have a good relationship, the 5 members of the court. We talk about the cases. And so we try to not just come to a conclusion by ourselves, to listen to each other and to really dig into the facts of the case. But as I said, we're only human. We try to do the best we can to make the right decision. But we have to just make the best decision with the facts that are in front of us. And so, yes, I do think all of us, there are some cases that we have that are pretty straightforward, pretty direct, and you pretty much know how the case should come out. And then there are others that you may read the briefs that the parties send to us, and you think, okay, I kind of think the right conclusion is this. And then the lawyers will come in and they'll make their case before us and they'll answer questions that we ask them. And sometimes you start thinking, well, maybe the other result is the right result. So you have to really give it careful thought and consideration, listen to the parties, listen to each other, and then just come to the best conclusion you can. One of the things that we can do is if we, like I said, the 5 of us vote. If there's a case that 3 vote one way and 2 vote the other way, or 4 vote one way and 1 votes the other way, the person who's in the minority who did not sort of win the decision, so to speak, they can write their own opinion too. They can say, here's why I think this case should be decided. That's called a dissent usually, or sometimes called concurrence. You'd come to the same conclusion for a different reason. That would be you concur in the result, but you would get there differently. But if you feel differently, you can write a dissent, and each of us have done that. But again, I think we have to all recognize that we're just human. We're making the best decision that we can make on the facts and the law. And the good thing is that there are 5 of us to bounce off of each other.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
There's a bill, I guess, in the legislature about judges that are not party, that are from a party, I think, of a law, Republican, Democrat. Are you allowed to have, could you tell me an opinion on that, or are you not allowed to have an opinion publicly on that? Should it be nonpartisan, so to speak, or okay to go Democrat, Republican, and why?
Let me take a stab at that, and then my colleagues will correct me. The legislature has the ability to make policy decisions, and that's a policy decision. As a court, we refrain from becoming involved in policy decisions, and the simple reason is that if there would ever be any type of challenge to the policy decision made by the legislature, it ultimately would be reviewed by the court. It would be improper for us to have taken a position and then be the judge of what we said earlier. So we don't take a position on that. At least that's my understanding, but correct me if I'm wrong. Any additional
You're in the
thoughts?
big chair, Chief. We won't correct you.
They'll tell me later. Okay, next question. Go ahead, ma'am. Young lady back there.
Kids should have the same rights as adults?
Say again?
Do you think kids should have the same rights as adults?
Haley's a practicing mother. She can-
I am. Well, I will say that I have a daughter who, she's 5 now, but for a couple years, she was very adamant that she had a firm, maybe even constitutional right to eat chocolate cake for dinner every night. And as a mother, I had to correct that assumption. Well, clearly, there are special laws and special rules and special rights that apply only to juveniles, to young folks. And that's for good reason, clearly. And there's an interest in protecting young folks in certain ways. But clearly, as a citizen, you can be engaged, you can exercise your rights to free speech within the bounds that your parents set. So, of course, you are entitled to rights, but there are some differences and some special ways that the law treats young folks versus older folks, be that the age that you can get a license and drive. I can absolutely say that no one wants my 5-year-old in the driver's seat of anything, maybe even a big wheel right now. So there are some special protections in place, but you are valued citizens that I would encourage you to get engaged and exercise those rights that you do have as early as possible.
Each of us has different expertise. The other 3 up here are grandparents. We don't deal with children. Another question, please. Go ahead. Over in the corner, Tom.
If you had an age limit, what would it be?
An age limit.
For being a justice.
An age limit for being a justice.
Charles?
If you had an age limit to be a justice, what would it be?
If we had an age limit to be a justice, what would that age limit be? I'm trying to figure out how old I am, and it's going to be just below.
10 years of practice.
Yeah, that's the only. So I'll go ahead and take a stab at that. The Constitution, the West Virginia Constitution, delineates what the eligibility requirements are for being a member of the Supreme Court or a judge in our circuit courts or family courts. In West Virginia, in order to be eligible to be a judge or a justice of the Supreme Court, you have to be a 5-year resident of the state of West Virginia, and you have to have practiced law, been admitted to the bar, practiced law for 10 years. That is the requirement in West Virginia to serve, to be elected to, or to serve on this court. It is actually different from the U.S. Supreme Court. The United States Constitution does not have a practice requirement for justices of the United States Supreme Court. In fact, there is no specific requirement in the U.S. Constitution that justices of the United States Supreme Court even be lawyers. So I don't think we've ever had a justice who was not a lawyer, but it's possible if the president were to appoint one and who would be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So I hope that answers your question.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. You know, the thing that I noticed when I was in law school was, you know, in order to be a lawyer, you have to go to 4 years of undergrad and get a, you know, degree in some other field, and then 3 years of law school. And what was great about my experience in law school is that the undergrad degrees were in all kinds of different things. Some of them were in history, some of them were in pre-law, biology, different things like that. What advice I would give is there are a couple things that I think are really important if you want to be a lawyer. One is you have to really like to read, because you are going to read a lot. That's one of the things that I think that each of us read a lot of cases. We read a lot of cases when we were in law school to learn the law, and we read a lot of the briefs that the parties file as you know, when we have cases before us. But even as lawyers, before we were on the court, as practicing lawyers, we had to read a lot and read the other side's briefs and different things like that. The other thing is, and this kind of sounds, maybe, I don't mean argue in the way of being combative with one another, but I think it's important to be able, sort of what I said a moment ago about listening to the other side and then sort of formulating your response to that, to whatever, because, you know, in terms of the lawyers that come in front, excuse me, in front of us that argue, they have to listen to the other side and then respond and say, well, you know, my colleague says this, and, you know, there is a case that says that, but here's why I don't think it applies in this case. So the logic and the arguments that you have to make, I think those things are things you need to develop. But one of the things, again, like I said, I think really if you want to be a lawyer or you want to be a judge, you know, I think that starts with sort of being able to debate issues, to study, to really dig in and learn all you can about both your side of the case and the other side of the case, and then also be able to just take the time to listen to the other side and really formulate your argument of why your side is right. And I think those are some talents that really you have to develop if you want to be a good lawyer or a good judge.
Next question. Good. Yes, sir.
Could you tell us about some time you had really strong personal beliefs, but you felt like you had to rule the opposite way because of the Constitution or the state constitution?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to answer that, and I will lean a little bit on former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. So she wrote a book called The Majesty of the Law. And I think it's one of my favorite books. It explains very well that our role as judges is not to make a perfect world or whatever our idea of a perfect world is. And if we decided cases based on the result that we wanted or what we wanted the law to be, the whole system breaks down. Because you have the legislative branch that is beholden to the constituents and the people, and that can change, and it changes a lot quicker than the judicial branch. We are not up here to be politicians. And if I, in this case, decide in a way that is, we'll say, personally better for my interests, whatever that may be, but against the law, then the next time, after the law changes, and maybe it is to benefit me personally, how do I know that the judicial branch is going to uphold it? The whole system breaks down unless the judicial branch stays within its role to interpret and apply the law to the facts that are before us. So we cannot be results-oriented because that's not the way that the framers set up our constitutional system. And again, always, as I said before, keeping both the United States and the West Virginia constitutions as our lodestar for the rule of law. So that is kind of my take on that.
Thank you. Next question. Here we go. Here's your mic.
How do you feel living in West Virginia has impacted your career as opposed to like people from other states?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. All of us on this court are lifelong West Virginians. And, you know, I've always loved that I've lived my whole life in West Virginia. Never really had any desire to be or live anywhere else. Three of us here had long careers in the legislature. And one of the things that I've come to know and realize is that West Virginia is so closely knit. It's people, the people who serve in government at all different spots, levels of government, different branches of government. One of the great things about serving for a long time in the legislature is that I got to serve with people who were children or relatives of other people that I'd served with before. And in that sense, West Virginia, I suppose there'd be advantages to being in a big state with lots of people, but to me, the advantages of being in a state where people know one another across the whole state and do so for generations, across generations, makes West Virginia unique and a wonderful place to be. And, I think you see it in our politics, in our public discourse in this state. We watch sometimes what things that are happening in Washington, and it seems so divisive and sharp. And we haven't really had that in West Virginia, and thank goodness. But it's hard to think of someone else as an enemy when you know him or her, you know the spouse, you've watched their kids grow up. And so I think being from West Virginia and having that experience benefits all of us in many ways, probably ways we don't even fully appreciate and that I can't fully articulate.
Thank you, Justice Trump. Another question. Here we go.
What is the purpose of being a Supreme Court judge?
I'm sorry, can you
What is the purpose of being a Supreme Court judge?
Help us out, Tom.
What is the purpose of being one? Process. Process, okay. Well, as we said before, each of us have different backgrounds, and some of us served in the legislature, and some of us practice law in different capacities. There are certain requirements, of course, that you have to go through. All of us have to have practiced law for at least 10 years, and that can be in different capacities. Sometimes you go to a law firm and you practice law. I know Justice Bundy for a period of time was a federal prosecutor and prosecuted criminal cases. So each of us have had our background in some type of practice of law. Justice Walker, for example, she's had a lot of background in employment law. And some of my background was in contract and property law. But then we also have other experiences that, like we talked about, the Chief Justice, Justice Trump, and I all served in the legislature in different capacities, which I think has been a really good part of that process of we spent several years writing laws, deciding how those laws should be worded and what words to use. And now, in this capacity, we look at those laws and we say, what do they mean? Not necessarily like we talked about before, it doesn't necessarily matter now at this point in our careers. What we think those laws should be is what did the legislature mean when they wrote that law? And why did they use that particular word, or why did they put that law in that particular part of the code? And so all those different experiences that we have come together, and that's part of the process of developing an interest in the law. But as we said, you start out practicing, and then sometimes judges will serve as a judge in your local counties. In your county courthouse, they may be a circuit judge or a family court judge or a magistrate. And then later on, they'll run for maybe the intermediate court or for the Supreme Court. None of us that are currently on our court served as judges before. We all five of us ran for the Supreme Court initially that's our first experience as a judge. But we have had other judges that we've served with that had served for several years as a circuit judge back in their county, and they heard trials. If you notice, one of the things we didn't mention is in our courtroom here, You don't see, if you went to your courthouse in your local county, there might be some things in the courtroom that you don't see here. One of those is a witness stand, and people come up and they tell the story of what happened. Another thing is a jury box, where you get a group of people who live in your community, in your neighborhood, who serve as a jury. Our court is an appellate court, so we don't take evidence, we don't have witnesses that come in and testify. We don't have a jury that sits and here's the case. What we have is the record, and maybe you've seen in a court or maybe on TV, someone sitting down while a witness is testifying and someone is sitting up front and they're typing everything that's being said, the court reporter. They make a record of that, and that record comes to us, and we read that, and we decide whether the court in your county, the circuit court, the family court, whether they got it right or whether they may have made a mistake somehow. And so what our role is as a Supreme Court is to look at that record. So going back to your question about the process of getting here, each of us have different backgrounds, but all of us, I think, had an interest in public service and trying to do something that we could do to make our state better and to give the assurance that we've talked about of being fair to the people that come in front of our court. And so we've all have different backgrounds, but all ran for the office and were elected to serve.
Thank you. Question.
Has there been a certain case that you've heard that has had a major impact on the way that you think or act or anything like that?
Part of our rules are that we can't discuss cases specifically outside the opinions that we write. But I will say that as soon as I feel like we've answered all the hard questions about something, a new situation comes up. So I think the process of being here for now almost 3 years has shown me that there is no lack of difficult questions because nuances to every question come up. And for a little bit of a more fun answer, I know a lot of folks say, oh, well, what's your favorite case you've ever heard? There are two cases that I do note. The first one is memorable for a couple reasons. It was the very first case that I sat on for oral argument. So I was incredibly nervous. It was my first time sitting in a robe. And the case was about a home that was filled with bat waste. And my phobia is bats. So it gave me nerves, not just because it was my first case, but also I got really icked out by it. And then my kids like me to reference this case. They think it's really interesting. The Supreme Court, we up here have to answer all types of questions. One question that we have answered is whether or not a donkey counts as a pet or livestock. So truly, about any question you can think of on any topic, we have likely at some point had to address. But, as far as philosophy and that sort of thing, it is always just the rule of law and to uphold the rule of law in every case, even when it's hard. So.
Thank you. Rebecca, I think we have time for one more question. Is there another question? Here we go.
You mentioned that some of you served in the legislation and the judicial parts of the government. Which one did you enjoy more and why?
We're looking at you, Charles.
Well, I loved serving in the legislature. I served in the House of Delegates for 14 years, starting before any of you were born, and then served 10 years in the Senate, and I loved every minute of it, but I love doing this as well. And it's very different. I've told other people, as a legislator, I was always used to people coming up to me, people I didn't even know, saying, here's what you should do on this bill, this measure. Everybody would, as they should, feel free to tell me what to do. It's very different in the judicial branch. It's inappropriate, improper for us to take information in from outside the sources that are authorized for us to consider. The record before a lower court, the briefs and arguments of the parties and their attorneys, and that's about it. And for us to go outside that would be inappropriate in almost all cases. So for very different reasons, I love both, and I will decline to answer which one I like better.
Taking the fifth. He's taking the fifth.
Taking the fifth. Taking the Fifth Amendment on that.
Mr. Speaker, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I'm going to take the fifth as well as far as which one I like better, but there are certainly different aspects. You know, being a legislator, as Justice Trump said, you know, you have a lot more contact with people, the people that you represent. They can come and tell you, here's why I think that bill's a good idea or a bad idea. But I think both parts, and I think it's really a unique opportunity for those of us who have been able to be legislators and judges, because I think it's a benefit to have served in both, because you do understand a lot more about how policy is formulated and why certain words are used in a law, that why you used, you know, shall versus may, or different things like that. And so I think a lot of the experience that we've had as legislators has been very beneficial, not only in doing our job, but also in sort of understanding why the job is important. And so I agree with my colleague, Justice Trump, that I love both of those opportunities. I did get the opportunity to serve as Speaker of the House for 4 years, and I absolutely love that opportunity. But this is a different opportunity that provides a whole different way of looking at those laws. And so I'm very thankful and appreciative that I've had both those opportunities.
In addition to leading the House of Delegates as Speaker for 4 years, Justice Armstead served as a justice for about 6 years, and 2 of those 6 years she's been our Chief Justice. So, anyway, I'm sure my colleagues agree with me. Your questions have been outstanding. We're very impressed with your participation. It's been a pleasure for each of us to be here. We talked about this prior to your coming and decided to issue a proclamation. If you don't mind, I'll read it very quickly. Whereas the West Virginia Civics Coalition is a statewide organization with a mission to foster civic engagement with education and make meaningful improvements to policies and practices within civic learning. It consists of volunteers from various groups and is one of numerous state coalitions in existence with assistance and guidance from iCivics. So, therefore, be it resolved that Thursday, March 13th, be recognized as Civics Education for Everyone Day, and that the West Virginia Civics Coalition be commended for its work to educate, encourage, and support civic education among the citizens of our state. Rebecca Tinder, would you please come forward? It's my pleasure to present this award to the President of the West Virginia Civics Coalition, and that's Ms. Rebecca Tinder.
Sure.
Move down in front, I'll go.
Where do you want us at? Scooch. Scooch that way. Yep.
I'm a fellow.
Thank you so much, Chief Justice Wooten and Justice Armstead, Bunn, and Trump for being with us today. The experience that these participants have had being able to ask questions directly to you has really been the highlight today. We especially express our gratitude for you permitting us to do this hybrid event to be held here at the beautiful Supreme Court and also live streamed around the world. We so appreciate your hospitality here and the staff. Thank you so much. All right, we'd like our Dingus Elementary students to come forward because our next activity is a very special one to demonstrate the knowledge and skills of some exemplary elementary school students from Mingo County. And then right after that, some future leaders from Woodrow Wilson High School in Raleigh County. For many years, West Virginia students have participated in a national We the People, the Citizen and the Constitution. It's a comprehensive curriculum covering our founding documents, including the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, as well as the history and principles of a constitutional democracy in the United States. The students are presented a prompt, which the judges will read, and after they get that prompt, they do some research and prepare a response to that prompt. The students do a 4-minute presentation as a panel. As you can see, the panel is seated up here with me now. And then the 3 judges can now come forward, and they will be the ones asking the questions. Today, we're pleased to have the students from Dingus Elementary School in Mingo County who will give their 4-minute presentation, and then students from Woodrow Wilson High School will respond to a different prompt and questions from the experienced We the People judges, who are Bruce Peroni. Where are you, Bruce? Where did Bruce go? Come forward, please. Margaret Miller from Charleston and Howard Sufer, also from Charleston. Incidentally, Woodrow Wilson is the winning team from West Virginia for our We the People competition and will be representing our state in the national finals outside of Washington, D.C. in about 30 days. So we'll have... So our judges will read the prompt so you'll know what they're responding to, and then they will begin right after that.
Good morning, students. My name is Howard Sufer. I'm an attorney here in Charleston, and I'll ask the other judges to introduce themselves to you.
I'm Margaret Miller.
Good morning, students. My name is Howard Sufer. I'm an attorney here in Charleston and represent school boards.
I'm Margaret Miller. I'm a retired social studies teacher from Kanawha County, and I work at West Virginia Public Broadcasting now.
And my name is Bruce Peroni. I'm a retired lawyer. I live in Kanawha County.
And would you take a moment just to introduce yourselves to us? We'll start at this end.
My name is Adeline Sparks. My name is Kinley Flemings. My name is Ansley Shepard. My name is Braslyn Wilson.
Well, our question today has to do about the ideas about government that the founders had. Congress has formed a congressional committee, and this committee is examining the United States Constitution and the purposes of government. The members of your group are expert witnesses who are appearing before this committee today. And we're now going to ask you to testify on the following questions. According to the founders, which are the basic purposes of government? That's the first question. The second one, why did the framers think a constitution was necessary to achieve these purposes? And third, does our government still serve the purposes that the framers intended? You may begin.
According to the Founding Fathers, the basic purpose of government is to protect all citizens' natural rights, as described by John Locke. These natural rights included the right to life, liberty, and property. This means that every person has the right to live without fear of someone killing them, taking away their freedom, or to have the things they own unfairly taken away. Our founders believed every person was born with these rights. They were God-given, and no one should be able to take these rights away. John Locke also suggested that without government, the society would be living in a state of nature. This means no laws, rules, or way to ensure you have protection against those who would harm you. It would basically be chaos.
As our founding fathers set up a new country, they knew they needed a government to keep this from happening. But they also knew they wanted representation and to limit the amount of power the new government had over its citizens. They studied ancient Greece and Roman history, learning about both the styles of government. This gave them the idea of electing senators and delegates. They knew they wanted every citizen to have the right to vote, because under British rule, only the rich and powerful had the right to say anything. This led them to creating a system of checks and balances to help limit the powers of the government and to come up with an election system. The framework created by our founding fathers set up a constitution and helped the United States create a democratic republic. The founders intended to create a government with limited powers to prevent tyranny. They never wanted to be oppressed again by a king and have no say in their day-to-day lives again. They created our Constitution to help with this. Our Constitution is basically a set of rules or laws that explain how the government is organized and how it should be ran. It also makes sure we have free and fair elections. The founder divided our government into 3 branches to help keep any one person or group of people from becoming too powerful. The 3 branches of government each have a job. The legislative branch has the power to create laws. These are the people you elect to represent you. The executive branch has the power to enforce these laws. This includes your police officers and your president. The judicial branch is to ensure the laws do not go against the Constitution or the citizens' rights. The branch houses the court system with judges. The Constitution is the framework for the government. Also, within the Constitution is the Bill of Rights, which guarantees our liberties and establishes our rights. It spells out our exact freedoms, which neither the government nor any person can take away from us. So, unlike when we were under British rule, we now have the freedom of speech, religion, and press, among other things. When the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, we started out by adopting 10 amendments. As issues come up throughout the history of our country, we have added to the Constitution to help to continue to protect our natural rights. Examples of those added include the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery in 1865 and the 19th Amendment that gives women the right to vote in 1920. The best thing about our Constitution is that when we realize we aren't doing something right, we can add an amendment to correct these mistakes. There are now 27 amendments in our Constitution today. So, if you want to make that Facebook post stating your opinion, go for it. You're protected by the First Amendment. Just remember that your freedom cannot take away someone else's rights or freedom.
Thank you, students. You can go back to your seats, and we'll have the Woodrow Wilson class come forward. You stay.
Well, welcome. It's good to see you again as state champions. All of the judges here have had an opportunity to work with you and to listen to your sound advice. My name's Howard Sufer. I'm an attorney from here in Charleston. And as we always do at the beginning of the round, we have each of the judges introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Margaret Miller. I'm a retired social studies teacher from Kanawha County, and I work at West Virginia Public Broadcasting now.
And again, I'm Bruce Peroni, retired lawyer in Kanawha County.
And would each of you please just briefly introduce yourself to us?
My name is Rama Setambi.
My name is Carson Mish.
And my name is Chase Hibbs.
Well, thank you. Let me read the question, the main question to you today, and then we have individual questions for you. The question is, what were the key controversies and challenges faced during the Confederation period under the Articles of Confederation? Discuss how these issues contributed to the eventual call for a new constitution. For example, in your estimation, have assessments of the Articles of Confederation been overly critical? If you were to propose revisions to the Article of Confederation, what specific changes would you suggest to address the issues of the period and ensure the document's long-term success? And we'll have Judge Margaret ask the first question.
One of the things I think that you looked at in examining this time period in history were the Articles of Confederation, but also events going on at the time. So thinking about Shays' Rebellion, how do you think that had an impact at that time, and do the principles upon which that rebellion was based, are they applicable today?
Well, to answer that first question, Shays' Rebellion was really the main reason that we got rid of the Articles of Confederation. There was no main system in place to discipline those individuals, and there was no strong executive power to enforce the laws which were put in place, as well as no main judicial branch in order to try those people.
During the rebellion specifically, many of the people who were rebelling were soldiers who had fought in the Revolutionary War, who were not compensated for their service during the Revolutionary War, of course. And that was due to the fact that the central government, there was no central government under the Articles of Confederation that could levy taxes. So many of these protesters were screaming during the rebellion, no taxation without representation, even though they did have representation. So the real highlight of the revolution, the rebellion was the fact that the central government was non-existent under those Articles of Confederation.
So as for if they're still relevant today, we now have a system in place due to us overturning the Articles of Confederation, having the Constitution, having that central government in order to fairly pay all of its federal workers. The rebellion really would not have taken place because the workers would have already had compensation.
Judge Bruce.
Okay, let me focus you on one of the sub-questions here. I think it's reasonable to say that history has not treated the Articles of Confederation kindly. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's unfair, and why?
I personally think that the criticisms that the Articles of Confederation have received are fully deserved. While there are merits to the Articles of Confederation, such as it allowed us to win the Revolutionary War and it established the 1787 Northwest Ordinance, which provided land in the West and moved slavery from these new territories, there are numerous faults and flaws with the Articles of Confederation, starting with there was no executive branch to enforce these laws. That's why Shays' Rebellion happened, and it was so quick and and it was a national crisis. Additionally, there was no judicial branch. There was no federal court system. And finally, again, Congress, there was no central government that could levy taxes, so it relied on states to give money at their own will. If they needed a national army, states would have to provide their militias willingly. And additionally, the government could not write treaties or formalize treaties with other nations itself as a whole. So you could have other nations individually negotiate or bargain with states themselves. So this was many problems with the Articles of Confederation that led to a much better document and the greatest legal document that graced the earth, which is the United States Constitution that we have today.
I believe that it was pretty much fairly deserved. I know Chase has a different opinion, but I think that the main thing that was wrong with the Articles of Confederation was that it treated each state incredibly separate, and there wasn't really a united states. The only thing that united them was the Revolutionary War. Under the United States Articles of Confederation, it was completely separated. They didn't really have anything together, and that I think was its fatal flaw.
While I will not sit here and pretend that the Articles of Confederation was a perfect document by any means and should be criticized decently fairly, I believe that human nature also has to be taken into account into the assessment of how the Articles acted. Coming from British rule, it would make sense that you would be scared of tyranny, you would be scared of this head monarch. So as such, you would overcorrect possibly and create a extremely weak executive power for fear that one person could take over, which explains why there was really only a legislative branch, because their belief was that many were harder to corrupt than a single human being. And additionally, as my colleague has stated, there were merits to the Articles of Confederation. It won the Revolutionary War, and that's not something that should be looked past. And additionally, it was able to sign the Treaty of Paris to officially end all that conflict. So while it is definitely not anywhere near a great document, especially when compared to the U.S. Constitution, it still does deserve some of the merit that it should receive.
There was mention here of the Northwest Ordinance, and what was the significance of the Northwest Ordinance during the Articles of Confederation era?
Well, before the Northwest Ordinance was made, many states, when they were just colonies on the independently, there was no rules for how far the land would outstretch past them. So essentially, these states that were on the East Coast said that as far as the sun's going to set is our land that way. So the Northwest Ordinance essentially allowed the government to say this is now a territory of the government that the Articles of Confederation granted to this government, and was able to consolidate this territory and specifically put specific laws in place, such as there would not be slavery in these territories.
In addition to that, by expanding the land held within this country, it did bring a sense of unity that was lacking within the Articles of Confederation. They were able to expand themselves and create something more than was originally, and it put forth that idea that we are more of a united nation instead of, at the time, 13 individual, almost nation-acting like bodies.
Thank you very much for your insights. We appreciated hearing from you again.
Thank you so much. Let's give them another round of applause. Wasn't that an impressive presentation by both our Mingo County and Raleigh County students? And we can certainly understand why they will be representing us in the DC area. Please also give us a round of applause to their teachers, principals, parents, and all of those who helped lift them up and set the best example for these students to continue learning in the classroom, and for all of the teachers to come forward and to receive their gifts. I have a gift for each one of you. These gift boxes, come forward. These gift boxes are for the classrooms, each of those 2 classrooms. One is for the elementary grade levels, and one is for the high school grade levels. And I need my glasses on to discern which is which. Pretty sure this is the high school. This elementary. There you go. These gifts will be used in their classrooms to help ongoing instruction. They have different areas and prompts for them to discuss and things to do. So maybe it will also help in your preparation for the national competition. And I know it will help your students going forward, both this year and the years to come. Thank you all for your service. Let's thank these teachers. All right. Now we have our next presentations from different high schools around our state. We have Shelby Plants from Point Pleasant High School in Mason County and Thomas Sibold from James Monroe High School in Monroe County. And remember, there will be another opportunity for questions. So for those watching virtually, please text your questions to 304-437-5442, and they will be asked. So let's welcome Shelby and Thomas.
Yes, I do have my clunky school Chromebook here that I'm going to read off of, but just ignore that. I couldn't find a printer. So yeah, like she said, my name is Thomas Sibold. I'm a current senior at James Monroe High School, and I'm the current youth governor for the Youth in Government program, if you've heard about it. There's many people here that are dedicated their whole lives to civic education, and so I don't want to sit up here and tell you how important it is, because I think we all realize because we are here for a certain reason. But I hope to give a unique perspective as a youth leader. And this comes through the Youth in Government program that me and Shelby are a part of. And it's really a unique experience. And I don't know if many of you have heard of it, but it's a chance where students will write a piece of legislation that they are particularly passionate about, and they will present it, and it will be as if it was a mock legislative session for about 3 days. And so it will be debated on, it will be go through a committee, onto the Senate chambers, and eventually go to my desk, the governor's desk, where I will sign or veto it. And then if I sign it, it will go on to real legislators where they can, use the youth's ideas for maybe real world problems. But I think that youth in government is unique in the sense that it provides civic education for everyone, which I know is the topic for today. But I'm standing up here and, what kind of governor would I be if I wasn't gonna promote my program a little bit? I guess a bad one. But what makes this so unique is that it provides an opportunity, a 2 or 3 day program where, you get to hang out with your friends and you get to learn about civic education. I'd be naive to think that if everyone was there, they were fully engaged and they wanted to know everything about government, because that's just not the case, right? But there's the sense of social solidarity that when everyone is there, that gets rid of the stigma of politics, and they're just there to learn. So we gather, a lot of kids are there just to catch up with old friends, maybe meet new people, maybe just socialize. But again, the social solidarity of everyone there, and you're subconsciously just learning the process of a legislation. I'll take my brother, for example. He came last year, he was a freshman, but he just came to hang out with his friends. But he came he came in, he had a great time, but he also learned how to write a bill, how the process of how a bill goes through the whole legislative process. And I think this is super important because if we want civic engagement for everyone, we have to know our audience and know why it's important for our audience to be engaged. So my overarching theme here is the power of learning by participating, and I think that's another thing that makes the youth in government so powerful is that you're learning by participating. The students who just came in here, I think you can attest the fact that you learned a lot more by participating in an event rather than reading and sitting in a classroom where you're just learning definitions from a textbook. You're learning and participating. Another program that I was part of was the American Legion Mountaineer Boys State, which was, again, another learning by participating program where you created your own state and you learned by doing. And it was so much more engaging and so much more, you could get a lot more out of it. But I also want to, about knowing your audience. So, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So the youth, that's where I left off. Learning by participating. If we want to get our youth involved, we have to create programs where they know that they're going to be engaged and they're going to learn and they're going to get something from this. And I think young people have such a unique stance in our world, and it's absolutely important for everyone to know, but I'd argue that young people are maybe a little bit more important because they are our future. And I hope you don't just realize it through my words, but genuinely acknowledge it. Because I like to say that young people are the most powerful commodity that you can have. It's better than any Apple, Amazon, or S&P 500 stock that you can invest in. We want to educate those who will shape our society of tomorrow, challenge the ideas of today, provide a resilient backbone of what they want. An educated youth also keeps leaders accountable through action rather than passive observation. With that, I think investing in a civic education where young people know that they can make a change is even more apparent, especially as more and more of us leave this wonderful state. I think that's a big problem that we need to address. But I hope I've provided some insight, and I want to thank you all for your time.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Shelby Plants, and I'm honored to serve as the Youth Chief Justice for the state of West Virginia. Standing before you here today is a moment that a few years ago I would never imagine for myself. My journey with the Youth Leadership Association started back in 2021 when I was just an 8th grader. Back then, I was shy, reserved, and hesitant to take a step outside of my comfort zone. I wasn't the type to eagerly raise my hand in class or let alone take on a leadership role. In fact, I barely spoke with someone unless they initiated the conversation. Government and politics, they weren't even something that I was remotely interested in. I had my mind set on becoming a dermatologist, not a politician. To me, the government was just something that adults argued about on the news. It seemed distant, complicated, and quite frankly, uninteresting to me. So when a friend encouraged me to join YLA, I was a little skeptical. I couldn't believe why I, of all people, should be involved in a program that was centered around government and leadership. But my friend insisted, reassuring me that YLA wasn't just about learning how bills became laws or debating policies. It was about learning how to become a leader, how to find my voice, and how to use it to make a difference. Looking back, I realized that a simple conversation changed the whole course of my life. What started as a reluctant decision to try something new became an incredible journey of self-discovery, growth, and leadership. Little did I know that joining YLA would not only introduce me to the world of government, but would also give me the confidence to stand here before you today as Youth Chief Justice. Hosted by Youth Leadership Association right here in the Capitol is Youth in Government. It's an experience that immerses students in the functions of our government and empowers them to become active and informed citizens. During this event, students step into the roles of government officials, engaging in realistic simulations of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Those who choose to participate in the legislative branch take on the responsibilities of real lawmakers. They will draft bills, collaborate in committees, debate policies, and work to pass legislation in either the House or the Senate. This experience not only strengthens their public speaking and critical thinking skills, but also gives them a firsthand look at the complexities at the lawmaking process. For students who are drawn to the judicial branch, youth in government provides an exciting opportunity to step into the actual courtroom. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Participants serve as justices, attorneys, and legal analysts, preparing and presenting cases just as professionals do in a real court proceeding. Whether they are arguing their cases before the justices or interpreting the law from the bench, students gain invaluable experiences in legal reasoning, persuasive argumentation, and judicial decision-making. Lastly, those who choose to enter the executive branch play a crucial role in shaping the direction of the program. These students serve as eyes and ears of the event, writing about the weekend's proceedings, interviewing our state officers, and ensuring that legislation aligns with the vision of the youth governor. They help guide the legislative process, offering insight and recommendations on which bill should ultimately be signed into law. No matter which branch a student chooses, Youth in Government provides a unique and engaging platform for them to develop leadership skills, build confidence, and gain a deeper understanding of how the government works. It is a rare chance to step into the shoes of real decision makers and actively participate in shaping policies and judicial rulings. Most importantly, it sparks a passion for civic engagement and prepares students to be the leaders of tomorrow. As a teen involved in a government program, I realized how important civic education really is. It's not just about memorizing facts or learning history, it's about understanding how the government works and how we, the youth, can actually make a difference. Before getting involved in YLA, I didn't think much about voting, laws, or policies. But now I see how they impact my everyday life, from the cost of college to the rights I have in my own community. Civic education teaches me my rights and my responsibilities as a citizen. It helps me see why things like voting, speaking up about issues, and even just staying informed matter. Without it, people can easily be misled, feel powerless, or believe that their voice does not count. But knowing how the system works gives me the tools to advocate for myself and for my community. I've learned that change just doesn't happen. It takes people who understand the system and who are willing to use their voices to push for what's right. Being in a government program, I've also seen how decisions are made and how young people like me have a voice in shaping policies. It's easy to think that only politicians or older adults have a say in how things run, but that's not true. Civic education shows that young people have power too, whether it's through voting or even just being informed and involved in discussions. We can influence the future. Civic education isn't just important, it's necessary if we want a government that truly represents everyone. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone?
Back up here. When it comes to younger people, when leading by example in your schools, I always think of others. Treat others how you want to be treated. I know for me, when I talk to other kids in my school about joining YLA or any other program, I know to talk to everybody you can. I absolutely love meeting new people, and YLA has actually helped me with that. So my advice would be treat others how you want to be treated.
Along the same lines, I mean, I think it's super important to do the things that people don't see you do, because that matters just as much as when people do see you do it. So yeah, also treat others with respect. Meeting people is such an amazing thing. So yeah, I guess. Any other questions?
How do you join youth in government? Does this have like a certain age range or grade range you need to be in, or can you just join in any time?
Yeah, I mean, it's for high schoolers, so most schools have a chapter. If you're interested, I mean, obviously let me know. But yeah, so if you register online and you write a bill, it's in April of this year, so you would have had to have your bills in, registration done already, but there's always next year. But yeah, there's a website, ylaleads.org. You can register online for that. You just affiliate as a no chapter, or if you can start a chapter, that'd be great. But yeah, anyone can be involved. It's easy. Contact me, Shelby, Bryce is a part of YLA, Luke Jolly is, and then David also. So yeah.
And I don't know what grade you're in, but there's also something for 8th graders too. It's called Youth and Government Seminars. And what that is students who are in the 8th grade come to the Capitol and they get to tour the Capitol. I was actually here last week helping out with that. And they get to learn what judicial is, they get to learn what executive branch is and the legislative branch, and they kind of get the feel of what it is. But for us, for youth and government, is when we actually take the roles of government officials. So any other questions? Oh.
Okay, so you spoke about this, and it really stood out to me. You talked about how many young people are leaving West Virginia, and as an almost lifelong West Virginian, that makes me so sad. So I hope that maybe the two of you, with your involvement in youth government, are maybe thinking about this as a career path, and are you looking at staying in West Virginia to continue to build a better legacy for your peers?
Yes, okay. So I actually, before I joined YLA, like I mentioned, I wanted to be a dermatologist. But getting into YLA, and I actually learned the love for judicial when I was in 8th grade. When I actually came to 8th grade youth and seminars, I decided that I want to be a prosecuting attorney, and I would love to stay in West Virginia. This is my mom right here. I'd love to spend as much time with her as I possibly can. So yes, I will stay in West Virginia.
I'm absolutely committed to staying here. I think you can't really complain about where you grew up and the problems that you faced when you're growing up if you don't stay and help to solve those problems. I'm not sure about lawyer or policy, but my current plans are to go to college to be a doctor, but I know there's plenty of legislators that are doctors as well. So that's definitely something I could see in my future. But yeah, I think West Virginia is a wonderful state with many opportunities that people just don't see, and they kind of just hastily want to leave. But I think staying and making it better is absolutely, important.
Wow. West Virginia's in good hands, right? That's wonderful. So on the line of participation, in addition to what's on your agenda today, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege and invite Secretary Warner up to talk about two things. One, I'm going to talk about our Civics Chords program that is being introduced this year, piloted in West Virginia in 4 different counties. And in your materials, in your bags, you probably have seen this brochure. And so what we're trying to do is highlight the importance of civic education and engagement. And if you look through this brochure, you can see what the criteria are going to be for earning a graduation cord like this, so that when you walk across the stage and get your diploma, you will be the recipient of this because you have received a good education in civics. You have demonstrated that through testing and getting a good grade in your civics education classes, and you've participated in some activity during your school years in high school. And you can see there's a very long list of options, and I'm sure there will be more to come as there are more organizations that are getting our youth involved in educational activities. So we're piloting this in Mingo, Raleigh, Berkeley, and somebody help. No, Mingo. Thank you. And so we're going to be putting this out this year in 4 counties and testing it and then getting some feedback, maybe tweaking it a little bit, and then hopefully it will be coming to a county near you, all right? And in addition to engagement in civics education and engagement in our systems, I would like for Secretary Warner to come forward to talk about the voting initiative in West Virginia.
I didn't know, honestly, if I was going to stay for the whole program, but after hearing from the brilliant minds today, there was no way I was going to leave this, this presentation and the effort by the students early. So let's give all the students that were involved in their presentations today another round of applause. Secretary of State's office has a program that we call the Jennings-Randolph Award, and we encourage high school seniors that are going to be eligible to vote by the next general election to go ahead and register to vote. And if those students that encourage their other high school seniors to register to vote, and they're able to register 85% or more of their senior class, they receive the Jennings-Randolph Award. So what is the Jennings-Randolph Award? By the way, there are 3 high schools today that are a part of this program, Woodrow Wilson, Mingo Central, and James Monroe, that have all won the Jennings-Randolph Award. Jennings-Randolph, yeah, there we go. So Jennings-Randolph was a U.S. Senator from Harrison County, little old town of Salem, and I point that out because we have students from small towns like Dingus involved today, and it doesn't matter how small the town is or how young you are, you can be involved in the process. But U.S. Senator Jennings-Randolph thought it was important that 18-year-olds have the right to vote. For over 200 years, you had to be 21 years of age to be able to vote. But he thought if you were old enough for bullets, you were old enough for ballots. So what did he mean by that? This was 1942 when he brought this up, but we had youngsters that were going off to war to fight and die for their country. And he figured if you're old enough for bullets, you're old enough for ballots. So not only did somebody from a very small town in West Virginia make it to the U.S. Senate, but he made it also available over a 29-year period of time because he believed so much in this that it finally became law and became the 26th Amendment, allowing 18-year-olds to vote. So again, I'm very encouraged by all of you all being involved today, whether you're in grade school or high school. Hopefully those that aren't in high school yet are able to participate in our Jennings-Randolph Award. We'd love to come to your school, provide certificates. And also Shelby and Thomas, I was really impressed with what you all had to say about staying here in West Virginia. I have a small gift for you when this is over, so if you'll see me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for being here and learning a little bit more about the Jennings-Randolph Award that the Secretary of State's office awards to those high school seniors that register 85% or more of their class registering to vote. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Okay. In conclusion, or at least very close to concluding the Civic Education for Everyone program, we're very happy to have a long-time educator and member of our West Virginia State Board of Education with us today. Debra Sullivan is completing 9 years as a state board member after decades of education leadership as a teacher and a high school principal. We're looking forward to her expert comments on civic engagement and community service. And for the last time, there will be questions and answers. So for those of you who are watching virtually, please text your questions to 304-437-5442, and they will be asked. Please welcome State Board of Education member Debra Sullivan.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. But before I speak, and I'm a teacher, I would ask that we get the wiggles out. Those Dingus Elementary children, particularly, have been sitting there so beautifully all morning. And everybody needs to stand up for 10 seconds and get the wiggles out, and then we'll sit back down, all right? You've been sitting a long time, and that's not what we want students to be doing. Okay, we ready? All right. Get the blood moving again, particularly to the brain. First of all, I want to congratulate, I'm almost speechless, which is rare for me. Being with this group of young people particularly, and hearing what you have to say gives me such confidence in not only West Virginia, but in the future of our country. We need more like you. We need you to speak up. We need you to be active. And I'm so thankful for the West Virginia Civics Coalition for bringing you together and providing this remarkable opportunity, not just for you today, but for me. I've spent a lifetime in schools, and they feel like home to me. And I miss being in school every day. I've been in school really since I was 4 years old, and then all the way up through about 10 years ago when I don't call it retired, I redirected myself and have gotten involved in all sorts of things. But schools feel like home to me. And my career has been quite a ride, but my core conviction has never changed. Namely, that every child, regardless of circumstance, deserves a good education, and that it is society's primary obligation to do that. And we in West Virginia need to do it better than anybody. There's nothing we can do that's more important. And this morning you heard reference to Supreme Court Justice Sandra D. O'Connor, and she's somebody I followed. We pay a price when we deprive children of the exposure to the values, principles, and education they need to make them good citizens. Arguably, the price is higher today than when it was written and when President Reagan appointed her to the court in 1981. When we fail at this vital task, we are imperiling our democracy, and we risk our country's future, all of your future, mine too. I've been asked to speak today about civics education in our schools, and it's now more important than ever as we witness the institutions and traditional safeguards that are being attacked. Teaching and living what it truly means to be an American citizen are of paramount importance, but exposure to civics isn't something that starts in school. And I know I'm a parent, grandparent, we have parents here today. Parents are our first teachers, and it starts in the home. And it isn't something that ends when you graduate from high school. It begins in the home as children learn to treat others with respect, to value fairness. That's a big one with children. That's not fair. And they learn to obey rules. And it's an unfortunate fact that not all children arrive at school today with these very basic understandings, so that teaching becomes part of the teacher's job now too. We just add that to the list of things they do. And as I visit classrooms, and I love to visit classrooms, and I hope maybe you'll visit me to visit some of your classrooms, I get to see slogans reminding children of what it means to be a citizen. Things like, we are a team, we work hard, we listen to each other, our actions have consequences, and we keep our hands to ourselves. That's a big one in kindergarten. As children advance through the grades, they gradually acquire the knowledge and skills that will shape them into informed, engaged citizens, good citizens. And researchers, they're always researching everything out there. And they've researched civics education too. And they've found that children exposed to strong programs are more likely to feel a sense of national unity, which is an essential component of a thriving democracy, and we need that. Students learn that it's important to exercise their rights as a citizen and to, most important, accept their responsibilities. It's one thing to have rights, we also have responsibilities. And they've also found that children experiencing robust civics curricula are more likely to vote as adults and are better informed about the principles of democracy and the issues facing their communities, the state, and the country. They're more likely to respect others' opinions, and we've heard a lot about that this morning, listening to each other, valuing what people have to say, and they want to be involved, like you all are involved. I look at civics education as having two parts. There's the head, the mind, the knowledge, the content. And then there is the hands and the heart. That's the practical part, the doing, the carrying out, and the participating. Let's look at the head first in civics education. Over many years, the West Virginia Board of Education and Department of Education have brought together stakeholders from all over the state, from all backgrounds, to build and refine social studies standards, including civics, kindergarten through grade 12. And it's something that we need to promote more definitely in our schools. Social studies, you can teach reading through social studies. You don't just need to teach reading. And I'm a reading specialist and an English major, but I, as a teacher, always use content areas to teach reading. I think that's, you can teach more that way. The standards introduction says civics education prepares students to be informed, effective citizens, etc. It goes on to say students must be able to research issues, and we saw some of that in action today, form reasoned opinions, and we saw that, support their positions, and we saw that, and engage in the political process, and we saw that this morning too. Students exercise tolerance and empathy, respect for the rights of others, and they share a concern for the common good. And I'm very committed to what is the common good, and I hope that all of you young people will ask yourselves, what is the common good and how can I be a positive part of it? So those words set the stage for civics education here in the state. But to me, certain words stand out. The word citizen in the standards. Citizen appears 58 times, responsibilities 26 times, common good 7 times, engagement 11 times. And as children mature, the standards grow with them. In kindergarten, the emphasis is on democratic principles, such as equality and fairness and respect. They learn what it means to be, to resolve disputes. That's very important. They learn how to accept others. Patriotism is emphasized through learning the Pledge of Allegiance and singing the national anthem, and they learn wonderful songs like God Bless America. I was reminded of the importance of such celebrations back in the fall during a visit to Rock Branch Elementary School in Putnam County. And as I said, I like to visit schools. And there I found our 2025 State Teacher of the Year, Seth Skiles, had worked hard with the students from preschool through grade 5 to prepare a musical extravaganza celebrating America. And along with the songs and stories, a veterans group had been invited, and they came in, and they were so proud to be there and proud of their good work as they had served our country. They explained the flag and the colors and the stripes and the stars. And every child in the room, and I don't know how many children are in that school, about 250 of them, were all watching with, I mean, they were just laser focused on their teacher and the veterans, the whole program. So a highlight for me was watching the children all singing and clapping hands, and the teacher did the same as he marched back and forth among the students who stood in place and marched too. It was a scene straight out of The Music Man. And I have no doubt that the children will remember the experience, and what it means to be an American, and I will remember the experience too. Later, I witnessed a real-life application of civic standards at the 8th grade level at Midland Trail Middle School in Fayette County. And I was delighted to see the students' understanding of their community's advantages and challenges. And that's something that we want our children to do, to look with clear-eyed perspective at what is going on in their community, what is good about it, what could be improved about it. But they wanted to, these 8th graders wanted to display their pride in where they lived. And they wanted others to see it, not only neighbors, but people living outside the area. Their interdisciplinary projects addressed real-life issues in creative ways, and they developed ideas that might be done to highlight their side of the bridge. They felt that their side of the bridge was being ignored. And I believe the project was called The Other Side of the Bridge, one of the projects. And they interviewed national park personnel, professionals from all backgrounds, business owners, to try to get to see what could be done. And they felt empowered because adults outside of the school were taking them seriously and implementing some of their suggestions. And I know as a longtime principal, I loved it when students would come to me with ideas of things they wanted to do in the school or bring the school into the community, whatever. And I recognized early on that it's real easy to say no. Just no. Shut the door. But they grow and you grow and everyone grows when you say yes. And you take their ideas and you work with them to shape them. Some ideas are a kernel of a great idea. And so it was working with young people to bring that out. So we don't hear about it often enough. Too often we hear about our public schools and their deficiencies. I guess I always look at things from the other side of the telescope. I look at the many good things that are going on in our schools, and we saw examples here this morning, and these types of things are going on all over the state. And thanks to the Civics Coalition for bringing some of this to light, and more needs to be done, not just by you, but by all of us here in the state. So that's the head part of it, the content. So civics education doesn't stop with book learning. Now we get to the hands and the heart. And the standards say that students must learn and practice participatory skills that are essential for an involved citizenry, and the curriculum must extend outside the school to include service in the community. And we want students to live it. We want them to believe that they can and should contribute to the betterment of our world. After all, you all are going to be the parents and the county school board members and the judges and the lawyers and the doctors and tradespeople. You're going to be parents, so you're going to be the ones who are running this world after I'm gone and many of us adults are gone, It's up to you. And having spent time with you today, I just am abrim with confidence. Now, community service may start with the one-shot deals, food and clothing drives, and the flood relief. Oh, heavens, West Virginia has certainly had a lot to deal with in these recent years. And there's voter registration that's going on in our high schools, and that's important, and blood drives and more. This gives young people an exposure to social needs and how they can help and how they can make a difference. And those of us who've been fortunate to work with young people in our lives, most of our lives, realize the energy and optimism of youth. There's nothing like it. Don't lose it. I like to think that at my age, I still feel that way. I'm still hopeful. I'm still optimistic. I still see the kindness that people have in them. Now, I was fortunate to grow up in a family and a time when serving others was expected. You remember the words of President John F. Kennedy, ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for. I grew up at that time living that life. So I volunteered to shelve books in libraries, and Halloween wasn't just a candy bag, it was a UNICEF coin box that you took around when you were out, and people would put coins in them. It was wonderful. And there were, we stuffed envelopes for March of Dimes and cerebral palsy, and it felt good to be involved. I mean, I was a quiet young person, but it got me out of my box, I guess, to do for others. And although I worked as a public school teacher and county and state level education administrator for many years, I ended my career as the 28-year-long principal at Charleston Catholic High School. So that's where I ended up. And that school focuses on academic rigor and personal development. And community service was a hallmark of the school, as I believe it is and should be in every school in our state. And I'm going to use it as one experience as an example because it's what I experienced over many years. Service was the fabric of the school, and it was constantly driven by students. They would come and they would say, well, can we do this? Can we do that? And again, working with them. Early on in my time there, what started with a handful of students and me slogging up a creek in the middle of winter to put a tar paper roof on a house, and that was 35 years ago. It's grown in that beginning, and I still remember the students, and I still remember the house, and I still remember the family that was living in that house. But that program, with that inkling of a start, again, it started with students coming to me. That program is still growing strong and now serves at least 10 rural families in West Virginia each summer. And that project that's been going on now, the home renovation project, grew out of a partnership that we had with Clay County Schools that we started many years ago, arising out of their need to provide gifts and food boxes to families at Christmas. And when we would go up there to Clay County to distribute the gifts on the the first Saturday in December with Santa and all, we used to promote the CHIPS. Remember, the adults here will remember the CHIPS insurance program. And there were so many people in Clay that didn't know about it. So we started registering them. And then we started learning about housing needs. Well, what can we do to help? So that's how this program got started. So now the schools, the student body raises thousands of dollars each year to buy building supplies. And then in June, they send a group of students and alumni and parents and staff up to make, throughout the state for many years, about 20 years. We just did it in Clay County, and now they've gone elsewhere. But one of the things we encouraged was that the families whose houses were being renovated would pitch in. How could they help? And you'd have little children out there with hammers and the parents involved. It built understanding among people. It's important for adults to walk the walk too. We can tell young people they need to do this and that, but if we don't do it ourselves, we are empty gongs, empty vessels. And we're fortunate to have so many well-intentioned, good-hearted educators working in our public schools. It's really remarkable. You can't go into education if you don't have a good heart. But we have to do the right things, and we have to get involved, and we have to vote at every opportunity, and we have to research candidates, and we have to consume, as was pointed out earlier, unbiased media. That's so important. There's so much misinformation out there. And I realize that in my own life, service activities have helped me grow personally. And these are things outside of school. Saying yes can be challenging. It can be very challenging. And you can't let it bring you down. You have to let it lift you up. But of all the things I've done outside of school, I know I've learned a lot. I hope I've given back as much as I've learned. When I was on the West Virginia State Bar's Lawyers Disciplinary Board, I was reminded that the bad habits young people form in school may later bedevil them professionally, much to their detriment. Tardiness, chronic absenteeism, not turning work in on time, dishonesty, cutting corners, and the worst. The Lawyers Disciplinary Board worked with that with lawyers. So you don't want to grow up and end up, those of you who become lawyers, you don't want to end up in front of the Lawyers Disciplinary Board. Take care of business. Library boards, I've served on them, and who doesn't love a library board? And the Juvenile Justice Commission has given me insights into the behind-the-scenes activities to support young West Virginians who truly are grappling with hard situations in their lives. And I was pleased to learn recently that community service for students is alive and well in some of the juvenile facilities in our state. And my work on the State Board of Education has been, frankly, a labor of love. Hard, but joyous. And I think my last official meeting will be in October. And that'll be hard for me because I am fully engaged with education. It's been my life. But I want to close with an anecdote from my personal life, a memorable for me chapter in my own civics education. I believe that, I know I was involved in lots of things growing up, volunteering in so many ways, but this is the one, I think, that shaped me into who I am today. I grew up in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., 10 miles from the Capitol. And my parents were very insistent that we learn about government, about politics, about how other people lived and how other people thought. My parents took us to the Supreme Court, and this Supreme Court, our own Supreme Court, I believe I'm correct, Cass Gilbert designed this. He used the same design when he went to Washington, and that's our U.S. Supreme Court. And so I can remember going to our U.S. Supreme Court, and I've also brought students here to this one. And you didn't really get to see it in full regalia today, but when the court opens and the judges come out from behind the curtains, I just love that. It's just such a notable moment. But as a high school junior and senior, I got on a bus every morning and went downtown to ride, the 10 miles to tutor students in a blighted neighborhood. And Robert, a fourth grader, became my special charge. And I was so determined that he would learn to read, because reading gives us such joy. Looking back, I wonder that I was so naive as to think that an hour a week could really make a difference. But I've learned over the years that it does, that adults interacting with children for any length of concerted time can make a change in that child's life. So Robert was a struggling student, but he did seem to look forward to our time together. And it was exciting to see his confidence in reading grow. As time went on, he started showing me his classroom papers. And we celebrated when papers that had traditionally been marked over with red, I don't like red pens on papers. I think it's kind of an alarm to students, but those started to disappear, and we started seeing smiley faces and some gold stars now and then. And after our tutoring session, his mother had given us permission to roam the neighborhood so that Robert could show me his world. And at first, I saw his world through my eyes. It was trash littered, boarded up storefronts, cracked concrete playgrounds with broken swings and basketball hoops with chains for nets or no nets at all. But to Robert, it was home, and he was king of the mountain, as only 9-year-old boys can be. And in time, I came to see the world through his eyes. Adventures around every corner. He led me down alleyways and through abandoned, crumbling buildings, and he took delight in outrunning gaggles of small children and sometimes older ones chasing after us. He was so comfortable in his world, and in time I was too. Then in the spring, I suggested we walk in a different direction, and he didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it. He was comfortable within his safety zone. He had never been the other way, several blocks right outside the neighborhood. And it took some convincing, but we ventured ahead. And he was thirsty to learn about the bigger world. He just needed a shove to get out there. So it happened that as we stood on a busy street, on a corner just 3 blocks beyond his school, this young native Washington, D.C. boy saw the U.S. Capitol for the first time. And I'll never forget the look on his face. He had lived his whole life literally in the shadow of this immense building, the seat of American government, and had never known it was there. He may have known what fourth graders know of the Capitol, but he had no idea it was in his backyard. And that walk led to other walks in the other neighborhood. We went to the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, the Botanical Gardens, and he was eager to learn more, and I was an avid accomplice. Those walks found their place in Robert's journal. We kept a journal. He kept a journal every week for us. And so we started talking about government and history and civil rights and politics. And as he brainstormed about how he might raise money to put a net on the basketball hoop on the court in his neighborhood, I realized that a bigger lesson had been learned. And I wish I could tell you the rest of the story about how Robert's life turned out. College called me away and we lost contact. But I like to think that, in addition to improving his reading skills, his perspective on the world and his prospects in it changed and grew, as did mine. He changed my life, I hope, as much as I changed him. I hope he's had a happy life. He certainly deserved it. And truly, thank you all for what you're doing, making a difference in our state, in our country. And to the young people, I say, do not lose your drive. Your intelligence is immense. use it to help what I call the common good. Thank you so much. So if you have any questions, I will try to, as Justice Trump said, I'll take a stab at it.
I have a question from a text message, and the question is, as we approach America's 250th anniversary, what can the state board or the legislature and other elected and appointed officials and decision makers do to elevate civic learning for students?
Well, put me on the spot and understand I cannot speak for anyone on the State Board of Education other than myself. And I think that as social studies standards are being reviewed, they need to be intensified. They need to, the whole thing about if you don't test it, you don't teach it. And I'm not saying we need to test social studies per se. I do think we need to bring it more, I think we need to bring civics, social studies more into the curriculum with reading and other things that are being tested. I think all the bodies that the individual mentioned, need to stand up for democracy and what it means. We need to do it in our own lives as well as through our legislature, our state board. We need to live it. It's not enough to say it. So, I would like to see a spotlight put on civics education. I feel that, as the researchers have told us, if we want a population that will be participatory and care about America, we need to have constructs in place that promote that. Okay. Thank you.
Any other brief questions? I know our elementary students need to get on the bus.
I know they do, and they have a long ride home, and I have been to Dingus. I have been through the Dingus Tunnel. In fact, I was so excited to go through the Dingus Tunnel, I went back and forth through it several times. So, thank you.
All right, as the Dingus students leave, we thank Debra Sullivan for her wonderful comments. We hope you've enjoyed all of our outstanding speakers and presentations today. We're not done yet. The rest of the activities available are for your involvement. For our in-person attendees, there's complimentary lunch. That means no charge, available in the Capitol cafeteria in the basement of this building. You must show your special pin, your Civics Coalition pin, to the staff person in the cafeteria to receive your meal. It's a box lunch with sandwich options, a bag of chips, and a bottle of water. After your lunch, if you still have time, please come back up here and spend some time in the Supreme Court's Learning Center and the touchscreen boards in the hallway right across from here to get a better understanding of West Virginia's judicial branch of government. You can also visit the executive branch offices in the West Wing and the main floor, as well as the legislative branch chambers on the second floor, where the House of Delegates and the State Senate are about halfway through their 60-day legislative session. Or you can go outside to the Culture Center, where there are several exhibits and opportunity to visit our extraordinary State Museum. Finally, there's a very brief evaluation form on our Civics Coalition website. It will be posted there tomorrow. We hope that you will take about 2 minutes or less to complete this evaluation. We will use your input for planning next year's event, and we hope to see you again next year as well. So please go on our website, WVCivicsCoalition.org, and complete the evaluation form. Thank you so much for your participation today, and remember, civics education for everyone.